Nobody likes drama, especially Zechariah. But God calls him to participate in a divine drama. God enlists Zechariah into a play. He has a role in mind for Zach. It was not unusual for God to instruct his prophets to accompany their preaching with a drama. Sometimes they delivered their message through a skit, a performance. This was all part of their prophetic repertoire. Zechariah had that tool in his bag. Now, he didn't like to use that tool, but he had it in his bag. This little play that Zechariah is commanded to put on has 3 acts, 3 scenes. Let's look at them together. Act 1, sing the taunt song. That's verses 1, 2, and 3. Act 2, play the good shepherd. That's verses 4 through 14. Act 3, play the bad shepherd. That's verses 15, 16, and 17. Act 1, sing the taunt song. And Zach is gonna put on a little talent show and show off his singing skills. What is he singing? He's not singing a love song or a sad song or a hype song. He is singing a taunt song. You know what taunt songs are. We have them in our culture. When they pull a pitcher from a baseball game, the opposing fans may sing, na 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 na, na 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 na, hey, 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 goodbye. It's a taunt. At hockey games in Canada, where my wife is from, they will sing, we will rock you. Perhaps you're familiar with taunt chants, like overrated, or someone shoots a basketball and they miss the rim, air ball, air ball. Either way, it's karaoke time for Zechariah. He will accompany his preaching with a little song. Act 2, play the good shepherd. This is where Zach will put on a costume and do a little acting. He drops the mic and he picks up some props, 2 of them. Act 3, play the bad shepherd. Here, he will imitate the false shepherds among God's flock and give them a tongue lashing and even a little more. In addition to these 3 acts, these 3 scenes, I have some timeless and timely truths. These timeless and timely truths are scattered throughout the play, and some are saved just especially for the end. Perhaps you're asking, why do I need this play? Why do I need these 3 acts? Why do I need these 3 scenes? Well, you need it because there's help here for current church members and future ones. This play helps you to know what to expect from pastors. Scripture puts expectations on the shoulders of those who lead the flock. This is why you need to be a member of a local church. You need shepherds. You don't need a place to attend. You need a flock to belong to. Why do you need this play? Why do you need these 3 acts? Well, there's help here for current church members and future ones, and for current pastors and future ones. Pastor, you're so vain. You probably think this flock is about you, don't you? It's not about you, friend. Just because you may be the most visible or the top 5 most visible, this gathering isn't about you. The lives of the sheep do not revolve around you and your preferences and your schedule and your whims and wishes. This is a scalding denunciation of pastors here. Why do you need this play? Well, there's help here for current church members and future ones, for current pastors and future ones, and there's help for Christians and non-Christians. Don't expect perfection from your earthly shepherds. Expect it only from the good shepherd. The under-shepherds, never take the place of the chief shepherd in your life. And true under-shepherds never try. Your pastors are broken images of the great shepherd. That will become clear today. You non-Christians, as a result of this text, you will finally no longer be distracted by hypocritical pastors, and you will for once put your eyes on the sinless pastor. This text will do you some eternal good. Act 1, sing the taunt song. FFC, I am not going to accompany my preaching with a song, for which you should be grateful, but I do want to exposit this song. The song starts off in the forest, verse 1. Open your doors, O Lebanon, that the fire may devour your cedars. Wail, O cypress, for the cedar has fallen, for the glorious trees are ruined. Wail, oaks of Bashan, for the thick forest has been felled. The curtain opens for Act 1, and there is Zechariah singing in a forest. He's singing a dirge, a wailing song, a lament like you might find at funerals in antiquity. This is not the opening scene in The Sound of Music. Zechariah is not twirling in a field singing, "The hills are alive with music." No, he doesn't twirl in a field, he grieves in a field. And he sings out, "The hills are crying," with the sound of trees burning. This is a funeral dirge. We are watching a beautiful forest be devastated by fire. This was once a cocky forest, thinking God could not touch it. That's why before there's a funeral dirge in verse 2, there's a taunt song in verse 1. Back in the late 80s and early 1990s, there was a show called Cops, and they had a taunt song that introduced each episode. It taunted criminals. It called them bad boys and said, bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, bad boys. Well, this is the Old Testament version of that. Tall trees, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Tall trees. There was no use for this forest to resist. Open your doors. That can also be translated gates. Lower your defenses. Impending destruction is coming for you. Blackened and charred trees fall to the ground. Heavily forested areas suddenly deforested. There were no helicopters dipping a basket in a backyard pool to put out this fire. Nothing could lower the heat of these flames. These are the flames of God's judgment. There were different species of trees, stately cedars, splendid oaks that grew on mountain slopes, everything proud and lofty and exalted. Both the cedar and the oak celebrated for their size. You towering trees, the wrath of God felled you. The anger of God toppled you. The judgment of God downed you. These may seem like to you cryptic verses, but the poem is not really addressing the trees. It is addressing the shepherds. Trees were sometimes used to stand for leaders in the Old Testament. Would you look at verse 3? The sound of the wail of the shepherds, for their glory is ruined. The sound of the roar of the lions, for the thicket of the Jordan is ruined. Notice in verses 2 and 3, there is very clearly parallelism. The second line structured like the first. A repetition of meter, recurring rhythmic patterns, a literary device, the rhythmical balancing of lines. When despair cries, it's a wail. These trees and shepherds are howling. The lions are roaring. Hear the outrage of the lions. Their dense forest, their lush thicket is no longer. Their habitat has become desolate. Everyone is weeping in their own way. Friend, this is a taunt song to shepherds. Shepherds who think that they can get away with poor shepherding. Shepherds who think they are accountable to no one. God is not after the trees in this song. He's after the shepherds. The trees are simply collateral damage. That's the end of Act 1. The curtain closes. Zechariah shuffles off the stage to change clothes in preparation for Act 2. If this is a play, then sitting in the audience are shepherds. Tall shepherds, short shepherds, light-skinned shepherds, dark-skinned shepherds, shepherds with 500 sheep in their flock, and shepherds with 50 sheep in their flock. A multiplicity of shepherds from all backgrounds and stages and ages of life. When the curtain closes, the shepherds begin to talk. What did you think that meant? What did he mean by the taunt song? Well, I think it means that it matters how we shepherd the flock. We will not escape our behavior among the trees. We will answer to God for our shepherding. He'll burn us, false shepherds. The opening act got the attention of the shepherds. Zechariah's song stung. His karaoke moment is over. He will not sing to the shepherds anymore. Now he will play one. This is by far the largest portion of our text. It begins in verse 4 and runs through verse 14. God tells Zechariah to undertake a series of actions. I want you to engage in role play. Put on a costume, assume the role of shepherd to the flock. I want you to become a shepherd. Just like you became a singer, now become a shepherd. Dramatize what a good shepherd looks like. Play the role. God says, but before you put on the costume of the good shepherd, Zechariah, I first want to show you why I want you to play this role. I want you to see what it is like when my people are not under a good shepherd. Why I want you to play the good shepherd, that's verses 4 through 6. How I want you to play the good shepherd, that's verses 7 through 14. Zechariah, while you're getting dressed, preparing for your drama, I want to paint a picture for you of what my people are going through under bad shepherds. Verse 4. Thus said the Lord my God, become shepherd of the flock doomed to slaughter. Those who buy them slaughter them and go unpunished. And those who sell them say, blessed be the Lord, I have become rich. And their own shepherds have no pity on them. Bad shepherds neglect the sheep. Bad shepherds merchandise the sheep. They don't care about the sheep. They care about their own advancement. God says they have the job of shepherd, but they don't have the heart of a shepherd. The flock, you are not defending them fiercely or caring for them tenderly. You are preying on them sinfully. These shepherds thought the flock belonged to them, so they bought and sold the sheep like property. These sheep are not yours to sell. They were yours to shepherd. Church, why are these sheep doomed to slaughter? Because of their shepherds. Who pastors you matters. God manifests the corruption of the shepherds. He reveals their tactics. He presents their motives, which brings us to our first timeless and timely truth. Some pastors are fleecing the flock, not feeding the flock. These shepherds fattened up the sheep for the marketplace. The more they weighed, the more they paid. They treated sheep like a mere commodity. They don't want to feed you. They want to fleece you. Their shepherds merchandised them. How can we turn these sheep into money? How much are we getting per unit? You are the means to their entrepreneurial ends. They discovered the pastorate is a great place for those who have the idol of success to thrive. They exploit the people to serve their own ambitions. How can I use this group to gain more followers on Twitter? How can I use these people to make a name for myself? How can I use these sheep to get more vacation trips? These shepherds were milking the flock dry. They are happy to slaughter the flock in order to feed themselves. And according to our verse, they will spiritualize it and say, "Blessed be the Lord," while they do it. Jesus told us in John 10 that thieves and robbers will creep into the flock seeking to kill, steal, and destroy. There will be hired hands that don't really care about the sheep. They are interested in personal gain. God says in verse 6, because they have no pity on the sheep, I will have no pity on them, and I will wash my hands of them. Pastor, what happened to you? Somewhere along the way, you stopped being God's spokesman and you started making this thing about yourself. You started focusing on numerical growth and financial growth, and it caused you to traffic the sheep. You are a sheep dealer, not a shepherd. Not all growth is good growth. Cancer grows. You are trafficking for personal gain those for whom Jesus died. Your pious sounding language while you do it does not change the fact that you are doing it. In verse 7, the curtain opens for Act 2, and there stands Zechariah dressed as a good shepherd. Verse 7. So I became the shepherd of the flock doomed to be slaughtered by the sheep traders. And I took 2 staffs, one named Favor, the other I named Union, and I tended the sheep. He's ready to act out the drama. He's wearing the shepherd's robe, walking in the shepherd's sandals, and carrying the shepherd's staff. In fact, he has 2 of them. He named them. One he named Favor, another he named Union. One would have been used to defend the sheep from predators. The other would have been used more like a shepherd's crook to protect them from danger and guide them to food, to keep them away from steep cliffs and in green pastures. Zechariah is shepherding the afflicted sheep, the very ones bought and sold by the nations, the very ones left defenseless and unpitied. Look at Zechariah, dressed like a shepherd, doing the work of a shepherd, guiding the flock, correcting the flock, rescuing the flock, acting out how a shepherd should treat the sheep. Would you look at verse 8a? In 1 month, I destroyed the 3 shepherds. Let's pause there. One of the many ways Zechariah shepherded the sheep well was by calling out other shepherds. Shepherds who were not tending the flock faithfully. They were abusing the flock, fleecing the flock, ignoring the flock. Zechariah destroyed them. Now, the quest to identify these 3 destroyed shepherds has sent scholars into many rabbit holes. I've heard everything from Moses to Maccabees, from the final 3 kings of Judah to the 3 future kings of Persia. I've heard they symbolize the offices of prophet, priest, and king. I've heard individuals from the past, present, and future. One commentator had 40 different possibilities on who these 3 shepherds were. Student of Scripture, caution is recommended in identifying these shepherds. In fact, speculation about possible candidates is really not advised at all. It's all purely conjecture. The 3 shepherds simply symbolize the totality of all unfaithful shepherds. Zechariah is cleaning house. He's cleaning the seminary classroom. You are not fit, get up, leave. You are not fit, get up, leave. You are not fit, get up, leave. He's ripping pastors out of the pulpit. You don't belong here, get out. You don't belong here, get out. He's removing those who endanger the flock. He's not worried about coming across too harsh. He's not beating around the bush. He's not concerned if he's viewed as nice. You are not preaching the Bible, so you need to leave. You are having a flirtatious relationship with someone who is not your wife, so you are out of the pulpit. You are meeting with women, you are out. Your theology is jacked up, get out. You try to hype up the sheep and design your services like middle school pep rallies. You are out. Oh, Zechariah is so harsh. No, Zechariah is protecting the purity of the office of shepherd. How were they destroyed? The 3 shepherds. Did Zach drag them into deep water and choke them out? I don't know. I like to think so. He's concerned more about the qualifications of a shepherd being met than people viewing him as friendly. The office is more important than people's perception of him. In America, we judge a new president by what he accomplishes in the first 100 days. Zechariah says, I don't need 100 days. Just give me 30. I'll do it in 30 days. He replaced all the shepherds in a month. Verse 8. In 1 month, I destroyed the 3 shepherds, but I became impatient with them, that's the sheep, and they also detested me. Now, church, I'm about to blow your mind. In spite of the ideal ministry, the flock as a whole despised Zechariah. The sheep did not appreciate the work of God's appointed shepherd. After Zach did what he did, the sheep started complaining. Were they bleeding hearts? Saying, well, you know, he is kind of blunt. And I really like that one pastor that he choked out. I don't know why, but for some reason the flock began to detest their shepherd. The flock of God, unhappy with the shepherd God gave to them. Brothers and sisters, you can have a satanic bitterness that lives inside of you toward your shepherd. You let it fester. You create scenarios in your head that never happened. Bitterness moves into your heart, and before you know it, you despise the one God put in your life to shepherd you. Verse 9. So I said, I will not be your shepherd. What is to die, let it die. What is to be destroyed, let it be destroyed. And let those who are left devour the flesh of one another. Okay, you don't want me to be your shepherd? Here's my 2-week notice. Contract terminated. He said, when I leave, you sheep, you're going to devour one another. I was the only thing keeping you from becoming cannibals. And that leads us to our second timeless and timely truth. The consequences of rejecting a good shepherd are always disastrous. The consequences of rejecting a good shepherd are always disastrous. Do not put it past a sinning flock to reject a righteous shepherd. The sheep have sharp teeth, and they can bite a shepherd. They bit Zach hard in this text. They are no longer under the safety of a shepherd who cares for them. They are now exposed to the enemy in a unique way. Brothers and sisters, are you biting God's shepherd? Are you complaining about God's shepherd? God may take that shepherd from you. Saints, you often see it from the other side. And you say, it's terrible that little church has that pastor. Well, maybe not. They ran off the good shepherd. Well, it's terrible for that church to have that pastor who is so obsessed with his physique. He's always wearing tight shirts. He's always posting selfies of himself in the gym. That's just terrible that they have. No. They wanted him. Don't misunderstand what happened. They wanted a cool pastor. They never wanted a true shepherd. They wanted a celebrity, and he's a cheap imitation of one. If a woman was wearing that shirt, they wouldn't let her near the stage. But since it is a man, it is fine for him to have a tight shirt around his pectorals and his arms. He can't look at the flock because that would mean he would have to look away from himself. They did not want godly leaders because they did not want to give up their own cherished sins, like pornography, sports gambling, a thirst to be seen by the opposite sex. When a congregation stops demanding that the Bible be preached, it will not be long until they start biting the shepherds who actually preach the Bible. When God removes a faithful shepherd, it can be a judgment on the unfaithful sheep. I think about the pastor who started this church, who was ran off from some other churches. I think it was a judgment on those churches. The removal of a faithful shepherd is a curse on the sheep. Zechariah went unappreciated among his flock. They underappreciated their pastor. Saints, how might you underappreciate your shepherds? What would you miss about them if God took them home or took them to another corner of his vineyard? What would you wish you have told them? You must fight to stay thankful for your pastors. If you do not fight to stay thankful for your pastors, you will eventually fight your pastors. Find something about your shepherds for which you are thankful and bring that to God in prayer. And that leads us to our third timeless and timely truth. Zechariah becomes a living picture of God shepherding his flock. This is the key that unlocks this entire passage. Zechariah becomes a living picture of God shepherding his flock. This is a drama of God and his people. Zechariah is representing God. He's acting out God's shepherding role over Israel. The rejection Zechariah faced can only be understood in the light of Judah's rejection of God. The flock abandoned their shepherd, so now they are open to the attacks from the invading nations. That's exactly what happened when the Babylonians came into Jerusalem and burned it to the ground. Burned the buildings and burned the trees. During the siege, cannibalism occurred among the people. Or as Zechariah said here, those who are left devour the flesh of one another. As a result of their insane rejection of God as their shepherd, it spelled disaster for that flock. The original audience of this drama already knew what happened, but God is presenting it fresh. Zechariah is playing a role. He was to serve the people, be rejected by them, then abandon them to the consequences of that rejection. But the rejection wasn't only of Zechariah. The rejection was of God, the true shepherd. Verse 10. And I took my staff favor, and I broke it, annulling the covenant that I had made with all the peoples. Zechariah took one of his two staffs, the one named favor, he snapped it in two. Perhaps broke it over his knee. The broken shepherd's stick symbolized a breach in the covenant. It's emblematic of an annulment. It's a termination of the covenant, a revoking of God's agreement to protect the people. Breaking the staff shows breaking favor. You exist by my favor. When my favor is gone, your blessings are gone. Verse 11. So it was annulled on that day, and the sheep traders who were watching me knew it was the word of the Lord. The covenant between God and his people seemed to have come to a complete end. He withdrew his protective care. This passage holds up a mirror to the ugliest part of Israel and Judah's history: the rejection of their shepherd. Verse 12. Then I said to them, if it seems good to you, give me my wages. But if not, keep it. And they weighed out as my wages 30 pieces of silver. That relationship is ending, terminated. Zechariah requested his severance package. You need to know, FFC, Zach could not care less about the money. He's commanded to ask this for the drama. It's all part of the play. It's written in his script. He gets a fee for serving as their shepherd, a final severance. They decide what it is. He doesn't know what it's going to be. They decide on an insulting sum of money. As payment for his services as shepherd, they give him 30 pieces of silver. 30 pieces of silver represents the lowly price of a slave in Israel's history. This was the era before coinage, so precious metals were meted out for payment. 30 pieces of silver wasn't just the price of a slave, but the price of a gored slave, one hit by a bull. An able-bodied slave would receive twice that amount. To the shepherd who guided them with such love and wisdom, they said, you are worthless to us. Only this amount. This shepherd was entitled to receive a just reward. 1 Timothy 5, in referring to pastors, it says, the laborer is deserving of his wages. They underpaid Zechariah. They just wanted to get rid of him. Just give him the money and get him out of here. They wanted to get him out of the pulpit, get him out of their gathering, get him out of their lives. But friend, You must see that this is God's shepherd, and they knew it. It wasn't just about him. They didn't just want him to leave. They wanted God to leave. And that brings us to our fourth timeless and timely truth. What price would you pay to get God off your back? What price would you pay to get God off your back? To forget his plans and ignore his demands? To not have to hear his rebuttal to all your decisions anymore? I want to do this sin and not feel guilty about it. I just want to live this life and not care if God approves. Verse 13. Then the Lord said to me, throw it to the potter, the lordly price at which I was priced by them. So I took the 30 pieces of silver and threw it into the house of the Lord to the potter. Zechariah is still following God's script here, following his drama teacher to the last minute detail. God wants Zach to take the 30 pieces of silver and throw it to the potter. Potters were the poorest people. They were paid the least. They made pots that broke. Not like the silversmiths, who dealt in high-class instruments. Potters were the lowest class of employees. The temple always needed pots, so many scholars contest the potter's place was at the temple, as it says in the verse. Throw it to the potter, throw it in the temple. This is like the proverbial idiom, just throw it to the dogs. It's an expression of contempt. Toss it, fling it. Zechariah says, it's just pocket change anyway. It's nothing. It's small. It's chump change. It's the lordly price at which I was priced by them. Do you hear the sarcasm? It's a trifling amount, the value they placed on me. And that brings us to our fifth timeless and timely truth. Zechariah wasn't the only shepherd to be sold for 30 pieces of silver. Are any bells ringing for you? Zechariah wasn't the only shepherd to be sold for 30 pieces of silver. When Judas betrayed the great shepherd of our souls, Jesus Christ, he did it when they paid him 30 pieces of silver. God's true chosen shepherd was sold for this exact sum of money. The drama is transposed into a higher key and gets played out in the person of the Messiah. In Zechariah, they are building the second temple. When this temple is completed, it will go into the New Testament. Herod will make major modifications to it, and this is the same temple Jesus will walk in and out of. When Jesus is betrayed and Judas regrets it, Judas takes the 30 pieces of silver and throws it in the temple. It happens again. Have you noticed in the book of Zechariah the prophetic accuracy? Jesus consciously rode on a donkey into Jerusalem to fulfill the prophecy in chapter 9. Judas does not consciously ask for 30 pieces of silver to fulfill this prophecy in chapter 11. Consciously or not, all of God's prophecies concerning Christ come to pass. Men often reject Christ for far less than 30 pieces of silver. Some of you are rejecting him for a girlfriend or a boyfriend, for a high school, for a baseball team, for a cheerleading squad. Do you see the insulting value the Jewish leaders placed on Christ? And the insulting value you are placing on him. Jesus, the shepherd chosen by God, but rejected by men. Verse 14. Then I broke my second staff, Zach, he's just going around breaking everything, annulling the brotherhood between Judah and Israel. Zechariah breaks the second staff. Just as the first breaking was a symbolic gesture, so is this one. When he broke union, he broke the bond. He severed the brotherly union. The brotherhood was ruptured when the kingdom was divided into northern and southern tribes. He broke Judah and Israel apart. Their brotherhood was torn. The divided union staff pictured the divided kingdom. Zach's acting was not finished. He nailed that role. Now God assigns another one to him. See, the same person plays the role of the good shepherd and the foolish shepherd. Zechariah didn't like all this drama stuff from the start. But this is another level. I mean, this just seems wrong. This just seems dirty. You want me to play the unfaithful shepherds? I feel uncomfortable doing this, Lord. I can't dress up like them. I can't do ministry like them. I can't play the unfaithful shepherd. And church, I can understand this. If you ask me, Kyle, preach like a false shepherd, that would be hard for me to do. Preach like a heretic, Kyle. I couldn't even play that part. It's just wrong. Verse 15. Then the Lord said to me, take once more the equipment of a foolish shepherd. I want you to dramatize this message, Zach. They want a worthless shepherd? I'll give them a worthless shepherd. I'll give them what they want. Zechariah begins to dress up like a false shepherd. I don't know how they dressed differently than true shepherds, but it was a change of clothes during the intermission. He had to take off the gear of the good shepherd and put on the gear of a worthless shepherd. I imagine a false shepherd in the Old Testament probably wore a Duke Blue Devil shirt and an Ohio State Buckeyes hat, the epitome of evil empires. A foolish shepherd is not a dumb shepherd, but an unwise shepherd. He's not unintelligent. He simply does not have a fear of God. He's a thick-headed fool. Zach is impersonating someone the people wanted to follow. Act 3, the curtain opens, verse 16. For behold, I am raising up in the land a shepherd, Zechariah is unveiled, who does not care for those being destroyed, or seek the young, or heal the maimed, or nourish the healthy, but devours the flesh of the fat ones, tearing off even their hoofs. I want you to get this. Look at me. God's judgment is not fire. Not yet. God's judgment is sending bad shepherds. Think about that. He's given the people over to what the sheep have always clamored after. God will raise up leaders who will neglect the flock, who will make this church thing about themselves, who will ravage the sheep, use the sheep, falsely teach the sheep. You don't want my shepherds? Fine then, have these. They get the shepherds they deserve. They are shepherds who will not do their duty. In fact, there are 6 actions that will characterize them. 1, they're all found in verse 16. 1, they will not care for those being destroyed. Their heart will not ache when your heart aches. They will not have the time or the guts to protect the sheep. 2, they will not seek the young. They will neglect the lambs. Lax when it comes to caring for the little ones. They will not feed the young, care for the young, protect the young, because the young are too much work. 3, they will not heal the maimed. The injured sheep with broken limbs. God says, I'll give you pastors who don't have time for hospital visits. I'll give you pastors who don't have time for home visits. I'll give you pastors who won't check in with you when you're sick. Notice fourth, they will not nourish the healthy. He's an equal opportunist. You got to give him that. He neglects everyone. Even the spiritually healthy can't access him. I'll give you a shepherd who will not come to you, and you cannot go to him. He'll preach to you, but not meet with you. The ministry to him is preaching only. He has a truncated view of shepherding. Number 5, he devours the flesh of the fat ones. You do not want to be overweight in his church. He'll just take a bite out of you. That's not what it means. It means the shepherd uses the sheep selfishly for his own benefit. He will gut you if it benefits him. These shepherds will go to any length to get some juicy morsel. I'll give you pastors who can't say no to pleasures. 6, they will tear off the hooves of the sheep. This describes a cruel shepherd, the brutality with which he deals with sheep. He'll mutilate the flock, senseless violence, tearing off their hoofs. These poor, defenseless sheep exposed to this reprehensible evil. And that brings us to our 6th timeless and timely truth. A good shepherd cares for his people. A bad shepherd could not care less about his people. He looks at the sheep as, how can I get something from them? How can I get something financially from them? How can I get something emotionally from them? How can they benefit me? God is contrasting the corrupt shepherd with the compassionate shepherd, contrasting those who afflict the flock with those who are affectionate to the flock. It's a jolting contrast: predatory shepherds, protective shepherds, ruthless shepherds versus reverent shepherds, shepherds who neglect the flock versus shepherds who never forsake the flock. This is a call to choose between two shepherds. Some shepherds lead you to the slaughter. Others lead you to salvation. Do you know how to tell a difference between a shepherd and a wolf? By what they eat. Worthless shepherds abuse their authority. Now, to clarify, I am not talking about a faithful pastor who calls out someone's sin and they don't like it and they run away crying saying, he's mean to me, he abused me. That's defending your sin by playing the victim. Not everyone who is crying is the victim. What I am saying is there are pastors who actually abuse their influence and abuse their authority. They do exist. We've all heard stories of pastors who preyed on women in the church or who preyed on the young in the church. They are predatory, not protective. After Zach performs all these actions on stage, he turns and gives a final closing poem. Verse 17. Woe to my worthless shepherd who deserts the flock. May the sword strike his arm and his right eye. Let his arm be wholly withered and his right eye utterly blind. In other words, I will break your arm and blind your eye. This is not something you want to hear God saying. Doom to you useless shepherds, walking off and leaving the sheep. I curse your hand, I curse your eye. Your hand will be limp and useless. Your eye will be stone blind. His shepherding, the way he pastors, evokes the wrath of God. No shepherd treats my flock that way and lives to gloat about it. Judgment on the irresponsible shepherds will be severe. Which brings us to our seventh timeless and timely truth. Pastor, the local church doesn't exist to feed you. You exist to feed her. Pastor, the local church does not exist to feed you. You exist to feed her. Friends, you would be surprised by how many pastors do not give to their local church. When I say give, let me be more specific. Tithe 10% of their income to the local church. Pastors who tip, not tithe. They are paid by people tithing, but they don't tithe. They excuse in their mind that they work and that their work counts for tithe, and they volunteer and they do this and that. The church doesn't exist to feed pastors. Pastors exist to feed the church. The pastor's giving, the money he gives to the Lord through the local church, the pastor's giving reveals more about his doctrine of the church than his sermons do. Pastor, this flock does not exist to put food on your table. You exist to put spiritual food on their table. And pastors say, well, I can't afford to give. I can't afford to give to the church. You live in the richest country in the world, at the richest time in history. All these shepherds before you found a way to tithe in far less affluent countries and far less affluent times in history. Church, let me give you signs that your shepherds are worthless. Ready? 3 signs your shepherds are worthless. 1, they don't live what they preach. 2, they try to shepherd you, but don't even shepherd their own family. 3, they think they are above the local church. They don't give to the local church. They think the local church exists for them. Sometimes missionaries are guilty of this. Pastor Jarrett calls them moochinaries. Missionaries who never develop the spiritual discipline of giving to the local church financially. Your whole salary is being paid by people giving 10% of their income to the church, and you give 1%? When I hire pastors, it's one of the first 3 questions I ask. Giving a tithe back to God through the local church is a requirement here for all pastors and even deacons. It's baseline stuff. And I know what you're thinking, like, which of the pastors is Kyle talking about right now? No, they were all doing this, trust me, long before they got here. You say, Kyle, why have you taken such a strong stance on that for the last 9 years? Well, because if that is not in place before you come to FFC, I question if you think the church exists to feed you or you exist to feed the church. The pastors should outgive everyone in the church percentage-wise. Now, some of you are very new Christians, and you had many misunderstandings. This was one. You had no idea. You thought the people gave and the pastors collected. No, we all give to the Lord. Also, here's another thing you misunderstand. I do preach twice a week, but I work for more than 2 hours a week. Yeah, pastors don't work for just 2 hours a week. It's a lot. It's other stuff going on too. The pastor should outgive everyone in the church percentage-wise. Giving is one way to worship. We as pastors, and we're all on board here, want the avenue of worship to be deepened in us each year. Now, just a final note here to pastors. Pastor, everything will attack the time that you should devote to the flock. The wolves attack when the shepherd isn't looking. Don't be caught looking away from your flock. Non-pastors, which is most of you, non-pastors, we are training up shepherds here at FFC. And they can't be indifferent toward the flock. They must run to the flock. They must have the heart of a shepherd and the hide of a rhinoceros. You know why? Because sheep bite, usually from behind. Pastor, your people's greatest need is your own holiness. It's not your ministries, it's not your giftings, it's not even your time. Your people's greatest need is your own holiness. Walk deeply with Christ. The eighth timeless and timely truth, sheep, that's you. Sheep, you desperately need local shepherds. The root word for shepherd is pastor in Latin. You need local pastors. Remnant, under whose watch care will you live? Who is your shepherd? Who is guiding you? Don't say a podcaster. They are developing your worldview, how you see life. A YouTube influencer? Here's a suggestion. If they do not submit to Christ as Lord, they should not be shepherding your worldview. Let me take it a step further and make it personal. If they are not committed to God's local church, they are not shepherding my worldview. Are you following the right shepherds? Beloved, you need direction about your job, your marriage, your children, your friends, your extended family, your career. Online pastors will not stand before God and give an account for your soul. Online pastors will not be at your bedside when you are dying. Online pastors don't know your name. They do not know the fevered sheep. Who is shepherding your soul? You need real life shepherds, not shepherds you've never met. As I look at the landscape of churches in the U.S., I can't help but ask, what is happening to shepherding? Where are the true shepherds? The ones who know their flock, who smell like their sheep. At FFC, we take shepherding more seriously than other places. I don't say that in pride. I don't say that boasting. I say that out of conviction. You need a biblical shepherd, not a celebrity pastor. Even if that celebrity pastor is reformed, even if that celebrity pastor is expositional. You need a biblical shepherd, not a celebrity pastor. 365 days a year, Daniel Hurd by your side is better than John Piper on a screen. We need local shepherds. Finally, the last timeless and timely truth. Savior, like a shepherd, lead us. It is no secret, church, that this text has led us to the true and coming shepherd. Jesus Christ, our good shepherd, our great shepherd, our chief shepherd. In the Gospel of John, Jesus said, I am the good shepherd. This is his self-designation. He desires for you to see him as the good shepherd of your soul. Jesus went on to say, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for his sheep. The shepherd becomes the lamb. The shepherd who shepherded becomes the lamb who was slain. He's the only shepherd that can take the staff called favor and the staff called union and repair them perfectly. He doesn't break the sticks. He mends the sticks. It was not an irreparable breach. He brings God's favor back to his people. He brings God's unity among his people. He mended the staff of union and favor at Calvary. He restored the broken relationship between a holy God and an unholy people. He atoned for the sin of a sheep. There's no wrath to fall on the sheep because the shepherd stepped in and took it on himself.